Hi, he is an old-time friend of mine. He's not old, but he's an old-time friend. But Steve is the co-founder of McKee Wallwork and Company. I have been taking classes on field trips there for many years. But Steve is also an author. He's written Power Branding and When Growth Stalls. He's a smart brief columnist and speaker. And just a little bit about McKee Wallwork, because I just thought, okay, it's an ad agency, biggest ad agency in New Mexico, but you guys are branded as a marketing advisory firm that helps stalled, stuck, and stale companies generate new momentum. So I want to hear more about that. My concern for my entrepreneurs are, how do I get started? Like I have this business idea. I have my business plan. Now, how do I launch? What kind of marketing and promotion do I need? What do I need to think about?
That's a big question. And of course, the answer is going to vary based on who they are. Probably as much as anything, you can't afford to spend a lot of money on marketing or hire it out. So you need a good sense of what it is. You're probably going to have to be doing it yourself to a great extent. But it really depends on the industry. When I started, it was hand-to-hand combat in our firm. Now we're a professional services firm, so that's a little bit easier to do. But the most important thing, of course, is to get some sort of traction going. And there's a variety of ways to do that. Of course, the world has changed immensely since we launched 23.5 years ago with all the stuff you can do online. But the most important thing is to find some way to get some early initial traction. And as I said, it really depends. If it's a consumer products company, it's one thing. If it's a professional service firm, it's another. If it's a tech company, it's an entirely different thing. But there's so many resources online, not the least of which is our website, which has an insights section. It's all free, so it's not a commercial here, right? Mm-hmm. That you can't get to the bottom of. I dare you to try and get to the bottom of our insights section. Just keep clicking more. There's a lot there. Free education.
Right. I'll put a link in my class to the site. Great. But it's just a lot of articles, right?
It's just a lot of articles. And my own backstory and training was I read. My first job in the business was I was a field person. I worked out of my home. And so whenever I had any downtime, there's no water cooler, to stand around and shoot the breeze with people. So I read, and I think I read 14 books in that first year, all about marketing. And it's remarkable how self-taught you can be in this business. And especially today with videos and articles and books, I would make sure you feel comfortable with your marketing chops, even if you're an amateur at it, in terms of your company, your venture.
Okay. And so as my venture grows, at what point do I call you and say, I need an agency to help me?
Yeah, there too. It depends on the kind of business you're in. We are, it's funny that you mentioned our description as a marketing advisory firm. That's what we have come to call ourselves. We launched as an advertising agency 20 some years ago. Mm-hmm. And the world has changed immensely. And one of the things that has changed in our world is when we were an advertising agency, if you didn't have a 6-figure budget, we couldn't really talk to you because that was sort of the nature of the beast. But what we found over the course of the last 5 or 10 years is, again, there's so many things you can do that don't cost a lot of money. You don't have to buy media in the way you used to. You have to market smartly. And so, we can take engagements for, in the low 5 figures if it's warranted, but it depends on the firm. A traditional advertising agency, you're still going to need a big media budget, and that's when you call them. If you're just talking about marketing and needing some marketing advice or marketing direction, increasingly firms are willing to consult with you on maybe a project basis, and you can get some sense of where you might go from here. So most of the startups around here tend to be bootstrap businesses. And I think I would try to get as much free advice as you can. Call somebody like me and say, can I take you to a cup of coffee? Of course, that's illegal right now, but as soon as it's legal again, Seriously, you can learn an immense amount and you
Yeah,
can network and that's the way you have to do it when you're an entrepreneur, by hook or by crook, right? You just have to
right.
find ways to make your money go far.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, do you have any examples of some younger companies that you're working with, and what are they doing out there right now? A lot of social media.
Yes and no. Social media has become rapidly a wasteland, and generally speaking, it's funny because 5 years ago we sort of doubled down on it when everybody thought that was the future, but it has become, such a circular, awful place to be that its branding opportunities have really decreased. But online for sure, lots of online. So smaller companies that we're working with, they vary. Again, it depends on the industry that they're in, but for the most part, what we've done is help them figure out their brand story. That's really important, because if you understand who you're targeting and what your story is that's going to ring their bell, it'll make anything you do that much more effective. From your own, what we call your owned media, which is your website and your social media presence and anything you do there, to your paid and your earned media. And maybe that's a good way of framing this discussion. If you think in those three big categories: paid media, which is what you might think, television, newspaper,
Mhm.
billboards; earned media, which is PR, getting your name out there; and then owned media. Those are the three big categories. You want to make sure your owned media is really working for you hard. And that doesn't have to cost anything, it costs time, but you can do that yourself. You can even create your own websites, right? These days, make sure your own media is spot on, which means you have to have your story down. And depending on your category, then you can move into earned media, which again costs more time than money. And paid media is probably the last thing somebody would do. So when a young company comes to us, that's the most important thing, is to get your story right, honestly, because it will leak out of you then, no matter what you do or where you do it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I talk to entrepreneurs about is branding. You have this product, this service or company, and you need a brand. Can you talk more about that and the brand story?
Yeah. So there's really, it's a very simple proposition, not easy, but simple. There's a 4-step process, and I hope the people who are listening will write this down. Step
Okay,
one is,
I'll write it for you.
what am I trying to accomplish? And believe it or not, you think that one is like easy. It's not. Most of the time when we're talking with clients, they're trying to accomplish a lot of things, which can often mean you're not going to accomplish anything. So you really have to get laser focused on, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Am I trying to get my first 10 customers? Or am I trying to get my first $100 million in revenue? Am I trying to go public in 5 years? Or am I trying to get a paycheck in 2 weeks? Those sorts of things. What am I trying to accomplish? Second question is, who's going to get me there? That is, who's my target audience? And it could be 1,000 people. It could be 100,000 people. It could be a dozen people. It could be one person. Who's going to get me to what I want to accomplish? And how can I understand them in all their glorious detail, their demographics, their psychographics, their motivations, and so forth. The third question is, what's going to ring their bell? What's going to ring that person's bell and get them to do what I hope that they do? And that's where my brand identity comes in, is if I've understood my target correctly, my capabilities are able to ring their bell. That basically sort of starts to tell me what my brand story is. And it's got to be very focused and very narrow. And then just to finish off, the fourth step is, well, then how do I go about communicating with them? As I said, when we started up, we sent bouquets. We had a prospect universe of about 50 companies. We didn't have any money, so we spent $30 on a bouquet, which is, I don't know how much that
Love
is.
it.
And well, the reason why is because we said, what happens when a bouquet walks in the door? What's the first question everybody asks?
Where's it from?
Who's it from? And there was a card on it, and that was sort of a creative, inventive way of doing what we did. But we had to know what we were saying to whom and what our objective was in order to do that. So within that third step of articulating your brand identity, there's a whole lot to that. And for that, I would say Google it, or just come to our website. There's so much you can learn. It's not something that's terribly simple, but it's so much fun. So that's where you want to spend your time, effort, and energy. And not to make a commercial, but I did write a whole book about this.
Well, I was going to say that. Are you giving away part of your book?
Well, power
Power
branding,
branding.
I'll tell you what, it has 75 best practice principles. And the chapters, this is funny. When I wrote it, I was afraid that the chapters are really short, and I was afraid I was somehow cheating. The number one compliment I've gotten about the book is the chapters are so short, because you can take one on. Somebody described it like a box of Pringles. You can eat one or you can eat the whole box. But you don't have to commit to a 20-page chapter when you're laying in bed at night, right? You can read one. And they're indexed and everything else. And it's sort of meant to be a primer on how to brand. So
that's great. I hope you don't mind if I purchase it and I refer to it in my classes.
Oh, I would really be offended if you purchased my book.
And I suggested they purchase it.
But there is if you do that, there is an index in the back of all 75 principles. And it's fun to just kind of run your finger over and see which ones jump out at you. Because then that's the other thing, is you can skip around in it. It's fun.
Yeah. How fun. A lot of the books nowadays that I'm reading for entrepreneurship, and I'm like you, I read a million books. They're short. It's not this huge long roadmap. It's nice little bites.
Bites. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time, but do you want to just give sage advice to my entrepreneurs? What would you say?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I sort of backed into it, which is a long story, but I never had a goal of starting my own company. And when I did, I had 4 small children under the age of 7. And that's really the story, is you have to believe, because no one's going to believe more than you do. And there's going to be times when nobody believes but you. And so you have to believe, and you have to be willing to get out of bed every day when you'd rather curl up and suck your thumb in the fetal position and go out there and fight for it. I've often said, if I was going to write a business autobiography, the title would be Perseverance, because you just have to stick with it. And we have a saying in our business that when you start over, you're starting over, which is kind of silly, but it's really true. When you start over, you're starting over. So you have to have a certain stick-to-itiveness through thick and thin. You have to be able to pivot, as everybody knows, that you're probably not going to get it exactly right from the start. But if you're smart, you're capable, you're talented, you have a certain something to bring to the world, and you stick with it, you'll find your way. I do say that after I did start my company, as difficult as it was, part of me says, I don't know why everybody doesn't do this, because it's the best thing in the world. It's really to be your own boss, and to have, every customer is your boss, but to be responsible for your own decisions is a wonderful place to be,
It's scary. It can be scary too, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, terrifying, which is why one of the reasons why I went into it with a partner. And there's a whole downside to having partnerships too. That's a whole our partnership worked because I have the world's best partner, but that helped because there's a little bit of a commiseration there, and I got your back and you've got mine. Although if I ever did do it again, I would do it solo. So if you're doing it solo, that's fine, but you got to stick to it, and you got to cut every financial corner you can. I don't mean in an unethical way. I mean, save money, store nuts, buy used, that sort of thing, because you're going to need it for sure.
So my students always want to know, what part of your work gives you the most joy?
That's a great question. So we have our vision, if you will, there's a word we use that we don't publicize a lot, but our goal is to be a blessing to the clients we serve. And we use that word very intentionally because if somebody does something nice for you, they do something nice for you. But if you were to describe somebody as a blessing in your life, that's like a whole other level. So it's something to really aspire to. And when you can, one of the ways we do that is by, creating the world's most magnificent advertising campaign and launching it in the market. But another way we do it is when someone calls at 5 o'clock and they're in trouble because they forgot to give you an assignment, so you stay up late to get it done for them and do them a solid. That's really rewarding too. So life is about relationships. Business is about relationships. And anything you can do to make somebody's life better, there's nothing more rewarding. And you can do that in any line of work. So I don't know if that's disappointing, but that's really how we look at it. When you can make somebody's life better today.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
Yeah.